Foreign Travel Grant and CCSTDS Travel Fellowship to attend IADR 97th General Session, Vancouver, 2019. She is also the recipient of the Amrita Seed Grant 2022. We welcome you to TMAS, ma'am. Please take over.
All right. Thank you for the lovely introduction. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining and thank you for showing interest in qualitative research. And for the next 2 hours, we'll see what are the different study designs in qualitative research. And let's start with a small question. So can I share my screen? Okay, all right. So this picture has a lot of influence in my life because this picture is one of the reasons why I got into qualitative research. So there is a story coming up. So before we begin, I would like to ask you, which country is this picture taken from?
Australia.
Okay. And
Opera House.
Opera House, yeah. So somebody knows it's a Sydney Opera House from Australia. And who is the person who is there in the picture? Any clue? I don't want you to identify the person, but still, which ethnicity he belongs to.
He's an Aborigine.
Yeah. So he is an Aborigine. So some of you who might not know, Aboriginals are basically indigenous population of Australia. And they were the first colonizers and they were replaced by the British. Okay. So they are still there in Australia and they are just like protected like our tribals. And they have a lot of health facilities and all that available for them. But there is an underutilization from their part in taking up these facilities. Okay, so why I'm telling you this particular incident is this was one of my second journal clubs, and I read one article which was a qualitative research. So most of the time in our department we only focus on quantitative, and just my HOD had a curiosity and he gave me this article, and I started reading about this. And I could finish that article in one go, and I was, hooked to qualitative research from then on. So I'll just talk a little bit about what this article is and how, qualitative research actually can give you ideas and can find things which you can not find with the quantitative research. So this particular article was on the Aboriginal health worker perceptions of oral health. As Dr. Athara introduced, I'm a dentist and my focus is on oral health. So this particular community had a lot of benefits. They had oral health facilities. Everything was there free for them, but still they don't go there and utilize them, and their oral health is very poor. So a research team was exploring what is actually happening when everything is given, why are they not utilizing it? And they understood from interviews that there is something called as stolen generations. Okay, so there is this concept called stolen generation. So what happened in Australia till 1960s was that the Aboriginal children were taken from them, and they were being considered this ward of the state, and they were taken from them and they were grown in other place. And this is particularly done for children of mixed descendants or half caste. And this particular phenomenon actually led to something very interesting, which is called as a transgenerational fear. This particular study was in 2011 or something, and it stopped in 1960s. But still there is something called as transgenerational fear, which is the aftermath of stolen generation. And from this study, they understood that they're scared to go to the health facilities. And they think that if something is wrong with the child, or maybe their oral health is really poor, the government has the power to take them away from the parents. So you can see some quotes here. You could go in there with your child and you could go out without your child. So it's very interesting for me. I was really fascinated with this type of study. And that is how I got my interest in qualitative study. So any webinar or something, I just put this, just to share how I started liking qualitative research. And today we are going a little deep. I think last session was more regarding what is qualitative research, how is it different from quantitative research. Today we are gonna, have a different outlook of, and we are gonna go into a little bit more deep into what are the different approaches to qualitative research, or in your title, which is given to you, what are the different types of study designs. Okay. So I just wanted to ask a simple question. So how many study designs do you think is there in qualitative research? Any clues?
Five.
Sorry,
Five.
five. Okay. Any other fancy numbers? Because there are five circles. Okay. No response. All right. No problem. So actually, if you look into study designs, there are so many actually, right? So this is the just a pictorial representation of different types of study designs in qualitative research. So what we need to think is a little bit different from quantitative research, where you have, an experimental study design, an observation study design, and observation, you have analytic, descriptive, etc. So here it's a bit different. So we don't call this as study designs as such. We call them mostly as approaches or methods. And there are hundreds of different types of approaches and methods. Okay, you have something called as ethnography, you have something called as phenomenology, and there is something called historical research, discourse analysis, and the one which is very much used now, something called as action research or implementation research, which also has a qualitative arm. So there are so many different designs and methods out there for qualitative research. So you shouldn't get confused. It's used, it can be used based on what is your requirement. So don't worry if so many things are there. There are clear-cut instructions to follow on which is more suited for your study. So today we'll be focusing on only the major five. Okay. So these are the major five approaches, which is commonly used. Most of the time, 80% it will be any of these, which are pure qualitative research. For mixed methods and for action research, we have few other methodologies. So for your purpose as a beginner, or, you just want to know what is out there, these five approaches will do. Okay. So if you want to know about designs or something, or if you ask me who is the pioneer in qualitative research, this is one name you should remember, which is Creswell J.W. So most of the books on qualitative research are from Creswell. And you can see a book called Qualitative Inquiry and Research Design, Choosing Among Five Approaches, which is the go-to book if you want to learn about different types of designs. Okay. And these are the five major approaches: grounded theory, ethnography, phenomenology, narrative or descriptive research, and case study. And we'll see in a nutshell what is all of these. Okay. And the first three are called as big three, because they are like, just like how we say RCTs. RCTs are the gold standard. So something like that here, the grounded theory, ethnography, and phenomenology are well researched, and they are well structured, and there are so many articles and uh, supporting documents available for them. So they are called as the big three. And descriptive research or narrative research and case study are commonly used, but they are the other three is more popular. Okay. So through the following slides, what we'll try to do is we'll see for each design, what is the definition, who are important, because if you want to learn a book or learn the work, it will mostly be done, and you will need to state like cite who are the pioneers or which reference you are using. So you need to know who are the pioneers in each study design. What is the theoretical basis for this, because most of them are theory based. When to use this design, what are the few elements or key features of the design, how do you do sampling, and what is there in it which makes it different in terms of data collection and analysis. I'll tell you a few examples in health, and I'll also give you resources. So this is how the day is planned. And we'll see with the first design, which is the grounded theory. So here I would like to ask Dr. Atira to start a poll. So just for us to be interactive. Before every study design, we have a poll, just as a pointer to the what's coming up next. So shall we launch our first poll?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So everyone please answer, click whichever you think is the best from the poll. Okay, so the first one is interesting one. If you could invent a theory about your morning routine, what would you call it? So we'll keep Dr. Adra, if it is more than 10 response, just project the results.
Should we answer all the questions?
No, just the first one.
We should submit it.
Yeah. So let's see who answers what. If you want to invent a theory about your morning routine, let's see. What will it be? Can you share the response? Okay. Are you able to do it, or it's fine if you're not able to, we'll find some other way and sort it out.
Ma'am, can I read the results out?
Yeah, yes. Let's see who has the, which option has the highest number.
Two options, A and C. That is the theory of coffee motivation. A total of 11 people responded, of which 5 people, that is 45% people say it's the theory of coffee motivation.
Okay.
And there are no responses for the theory of last minute decisions.
Okay, nobody
Second,
makes,
we have
okay.
45%, that is 5 people have opted for the theory of snooze buttons. And one person who has answered the theory of breakfast choices.
All right, that's good. I think I'm happy with those choices. I myself answered actually for the theory of snooze button. Okay. It's there in, I think almost all of our alarms are there, I can show you mine. Like here, every 5 minutes I have an alarm in the morning. All right. So what I wanted you to do in that process is that we all have some form of, a behavior attached to all of these, right? For example, if you ask about me, I have every 5 minutes an alarm set because I won't wake up with the first one. So there is actually a behavior attached to it. And if you explore in detail, you will understand that what is the reason for this particular behavior. What is the explanation behind it, that why for example, I keep this 5 minutes. So that is something related to grounded theory, which basically means you have a process or something going on and you're finding an explanation for that. So that is what is grounded theory. And we'll see in detail what are the different, aspects of grounded theory. So I hope you are with me and we can move on to the next. So grounded theory has been defined by Creswell as follows. It's basically an explanation. So a theory basically means an explanation of anything. It can be a process, an action, or maybe an interaction, which is based on large number of participants. So if we have like a theory of snooze buttons, why we have snooze buttons available and why people do it like this, it will be good if we take from a large number of participants, right? And then arrive at a conclusion like why people actually keep it, why we need alarm or something to wake up, why can't we wake up like that, or some sort of theory you can give it from this data. So this kind of exploration is called as grounded theory. So an explanation of anything like process, action, or interaction based on large number of participants is what is called as grounded theory. And the pioneers in grounded theory, if you look into different papers in grounded theory, you will be mostly seeing these names, Glasner and Strauss. They are one of the pioneers in this field. That is the Barney, Glasser, and Strauss. And what they did was there was a time when the research was all regarding hypothesis testing. So if you look into your quantitative designs, the experimental study designs, what we are doing is we are basically testing the hypothesis and seeing this is better or this is good or whatever. Okay, so it was during that time that Glasser and Strauss had a different thought, and they thought that why not make a study design in which hypothesis generated rather than testing it. Okay, so that is why it is. So for example, a theory of snooze buttons, you generate it and then later test it out. Okay, so that is how they thought about it, and they brought up a concept in which a hypothesis is generated at the end. So they provided a new methodology for discovering theory by taking an inductive approach to qualitative research. So what you're doing is from different participants, you're gonna pull out a theory which is generalizable to all of them. That is what is known as inductive. Inductive means from narrow to general. Okay, and deductive means the opposite, from general to narrow. Okay, so Glasner and Strauss were one of the pioneers who introduced inductive approach to qualitative research. So the theoretical underpinning is something like this. So I hope you have all heard about Bermuda Triangle. Yeah. Yes. What is Bermuda Triangle? Any clue?
It's a triangle where flights gets missed out.
Okay. Any explanation as to why that happens?
Here's magnetic interference.
Yeah. So there are a lot of, I agree, maybe it is one of the reasons, but there are so many, mysteries regarding that, and nobody's yet to say this is the reason. So if you have something like a Bermuda Triangle in your research or field, grounded theory will help you to actually form a theory. So that's why I've included this example. So what it's going to do is, if there is no sufficient theory, there is no theory sufficient to apply to your studies, then you form new theoretical models based on the information collected through interview. So what you are getting at the end is basically a theory, which is developed by something called as selective coding, which I'll tell you very soon. So what you need to understand, it's not like, theory of relativity or something like a grand theory. No, it's just a low level theory, which is basically an explanation for what is going on or what is your research question. Okay. So this is the theoretical underpinning behind a grounded theory, in which you are saying that through observation or interviews, you are finding an explanation to your research question. And this is done through something called as coding. Okay, so your next session will be on data collection, how you have to collect data. And your last session will be on coding and data analysis. So I'll be explaining this more in those last sessions, but just for the perspective regarding, methodological perspective, what we usually do is you collect the data through qualitative inquiries like observation, interviews. Then you have these transcripts ready of these data. Then you start with coding. Coding as in each sentence, what does it mean to your research question? You start coding. And then after you finish your first level of open coding, you have to categorize them and find out relationship between them. And in grounded theory, you will do something additional, which is called a selective coding or theoretical coding. So I just wanted you to understand a word which is selective or theoretical coding, which is special to grounded theory. So here you will code those matter or those matter which is related to your theory formation. Okay, if you want to talk about coffee motivation or something, which will actually lead to a theory, which findings will actually lead to a theory, you will code only that, which is called a selective coding. And when will you arrive at that? Through this process, you will arrive at selective coding. Okay, so I know it may be a little bit confused. I will talk about this very elaborately in our last class, but just I want you to know that if you think about grounded theory, there is something called a selective coding, which is not common to other study designs. Now, again, there are different schools of thoughts for whether it be grounded theory or different study designs, there will always be a different school of thought. Okay. So there is another type of grounded theory in which you code it through something called as conditional matrix. Okay. So here, what you do is you form a relationship between different levels of data. And this is represented like this. This is Corbin's conditional matrix. And here you can see at the individual level, what does the data say? At the group level, what does the data say? At the sub-organizational level, institutional level, community level, regional level, national level, global level. So as per your research question and as per your context, you can do a conditional matrix coding here. So just understand that, okay, there is something called as theoretical coding or selective coding, and there is also something called as conditional coding or conditional matrix coding, which will actually help us to code data in a different way subject to different contexts. Okay. Again, one more variation. So till now, what we have seen is that it's an inductive approach, right? So you have different observations in which you're arriving at a finding and you're generalizing it to different, generalizing it to all of these people, okay? Now, there is another theory called as interpretive theory by Kathy Charmas. And she suggests that instead of just an explanation, why don't we understand the phenomena? Okay, why don't we understand what is happening? So rather than saying this is because of this, let's dive deep into understanding the phenomena. So this you achieve by your own past and present experience. So the researcher will interpret the theory. So till here, the Strauss and Corbin, you're just reporting what you're seeing. In this part, Sharma's part, you are bringing your own subjective experience. Okay, it's a little bit, few concepts coming. So in the field of grounded theory itself, there are so many debates regarding which grounded theory approach best suits the purpose of the research experiment. So this is gist of this. There are three major approaches, Glass and Stroessner. They are saying data is found and it can be used to formulate a new theory. Strauss and Corbin focus that a context is important and a conditional matrix coding is recommended, in which you like global level, regional level. So you paint the context and then explain it. Charmas says that why don't you bring in your own perspective rather than providing an explanation? Okay, rather than saying a singular truth, you can say what is your perspective regarding it. So these are the three main research methodologies: Strauss, Cobbins, and Charmas, which you will see, if you take a paper, you will see, okay, this is based on Charmas' grounded theory, or this is based on Cobbins' grounded theory. So something like this you will be see, and you will know, okay, they have used this type, interpretive type, or they've used the conditional matrix, okay? So that is the idea here. And this is how, at the end, what you're going to get, okay? So in your methodology of grounded theory, you follow the classical grounded theory by Glasner and Strauss. We are trying to make an explanation. You will get a big T theory, which is generalizable theory. Okay. If you're following the other two approach like Chalmers, constructivist or interpretive, or the conditional matrix Strauss and Corbin, you're getting a little T theory, which is contextual or subjective theory. And if you're using other type of qualitative design, you're not getting a theory as such, you're just getting a description. Okay. So these are the different designs for grounded theory. So when actually should you use a grounded theory approach? When should you actually use it? Okay. So when you don't know much about something, there's no explanation, or there is a, just like Bermuda Triangle, you don't know what is happening. Okay. In that case, a grounded theory is available. If there is a finding which is there in other part of the world, but not in your part. So it is tested or developed for a different population or research group. You want to know whether it fits in your context, you can do a grounded theory. Theories may be present, but incomplete. Then you can adopt this. And a theory is needed to explain how people are experiencing a phenomenon. So something like this, you can always use a grounded theory. Okay, so what is important is that you're focusing on a process or an action which basically occurs over time. And by this, we are developing a theory of the process. And your data collection mostly for grounded theory will be through interviews, in which the researcher constantly compares new interviews to the existing theory. And one important procedure which we do when we are doing a grounded theory, something called as memoing. Okay. So what memoing, as you all know, you might all have a sticky notes or something like that in which you note down what you think at times, right? It's the same thing that happens in grounded theory. When you're taking an interview, you will note, okay, this she has kept quiet or he has kept quiet. What could be the reason for that? There are some non-verbal communication. Maybe somebody's feeling very uncomfortable. So something like observation you're making, you can note it down. And it's very important there in grounded theory. And this is called as memoing. Okay. So you can see here, you have this coding, transcript and all that. And you can see memos written by the researcher here. And these memos, from these memos, you can derive a themes. Okay. So memoing is an important part of grounded theory. So sampling, what we generally use in qualitative research. So for example, if you ask what is a general, type of sampling, it's purposive sampling. So there's no rigid rules like, or a magic number like a sample size, which we get for qualitative studies. It is usually purposive sampling. So what is your research purpose? You select people accordingly. So that is mostly how it is. And in grounded theory, you use something called as a theoretical sampling, in which you select those people after purposive sampling. You find that few people are giving good inputs, and they'll be useful to make a theory. Okay, those type of participants are called as theoretical sampling. And this method you use it to select and develop a theory. So this is how the process goes. You have your data collection, you have your coding. Your data collection will be through purposive sampling, then you're coding it. And then from this, you understand that, okay, there are these people who can give me further information, who will help me do develop a theory. You'll do the theoretical sampling, go back, do the data collection, coding, and then this will go on. And finally, once you got all the information and you're ready with your theory, that's it. Okay. So theoretical sampling seeks additional data based on the concepts developed from initial data analysis. And this method will expand and refine the evolving theory. So this is how the sampling process works. And this is how the analysis goes on. So whatever I have told till now is there in this picture. Okay. So you have your data collection using these usual qualitative inquiries. You do your open coding. And based on your open coding, you do your theoretical sampling and then finish this. That is axial coding and selective coding. And you have your memos or feed notes, which can be used anywhere. And you always compare your open coding, axial coding, and selective coding. Is this applicable here, or, constant comparison is needed? So we can generalize it. Okay. So that is the analysis part of grounded theory. And I'll give you an example. I couldn't find actually much good example from transfusion medicine. So I'm using a dental example. So as dentists, dental diseases are mostly preventable, but the people are not more aware of it, and the dentists itself really practice prevention very less, and most of the time it is curative. So there is a research question why dentists persist in drilling and filling early stages of tooth decay when it can be prevented. Okay. And this is a grounded theory. You can use this example. It's basically a worked out example of a grounded theory. It will help you to structure your proposal or something like that if you want to use a grounded theory. And you can see here there is a research question. There is an initial sampling of few people here. And then there is data analysis coding and ethical approval, a theoretical sampling, which focuses on few of the other dentists. And then you can see it's repeated multiple times. Okay, again, they are going for the coding again follows, and then theoretical sampling again happens, and then ethics. Okay, so like this, it gets repeated. This is how usually a grounded theory works out. So you'll start with a large number of purposive sampling, find out people who will give you more information, do it again, do it again, do it, like that it goes. And once you achieve saturation, that is, you start getting same results and your theory is ready, you stop the study. So what is very interesting here is how many times this has to undergo ethical modification. Okay. So this is very important in qualitative research, which people don't really understand, is that it's flexible and it keeps on changing. So it's not like, in quantitative where it's just one proposal, one sample size, and it's done. This keeps on changing and you might need repeated ethical approvals. Okay. So this is how it looks like. You have your raw data, initial coding, focused coding, and then your theoretical coding. And there is a theory of process of adapting to prevention, which they have developed. And you can see how a memo looks like. Okay, so this is how they write a memo. Okay, I found one couple of grounded theories which are not, I think, a little bit related. This is regarding blood donation. You can check it out in your field if this applies to you. Most of the studies, qualitative studies, are on blood donations. You can have a look. And these are few of the resources which you can check. Corbin, Charmas, and then Strauss. They are the pioneers and they have a lot of books available. Okay, so I'll stop here. Any doubts? Or are you with me? Hope everybody had a good lunch. Are you with me? Can you understand few things?
Yes, Dr. Vinita.
Okay, thank you for the response. So we'll start with the next question. So Dr. Athara, can you start with the next poll? The next one is very interesting. You able to do that? Okay. Yeah, the poll is here. Please answer the second question. If you could immerse yourself in any culture in India for a month, you want to go and experience somebody's culture in our country, who would it be? Okay, there are a few choices. There are many different culture available, but imagine if you are given a choice of any of these four, which one would you select? A tribal community in the Northeast, a vibrant city like Mumbai, a traditional village in Rajasthan, or our own coastal fishing community in Kerala? So choose one and we'll start with another interesting study design. You get around 10 responses. Dr. Athra, you can start reading it out.
Ma'am, we have a total of 12 responses so far.
Oh, wow. Yes. So which has the
Now-
highest number?
Now it's 14. Yeah. So out of that, 4 people have answered a tribal community in the Northeast.
Mhm,
2 people have answered a vibrant city like Mumbai.
mhm.
1 person has answered a traditional village in Rajasthan. And
Okay.
7, that is 50% of the people have answered a coastal fishing community in Kerala.
Oh, wow. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so imagine we have a month of time and to be with the community, to learn about them, to see how they live. That is actually a type of qualitative research, which I'll be talking to you about very soon. And that type of research is called ethnography. Okay, so from the name itself, you understand, okay, it's related to ethnicity and culture. So what is ethnography? A definition by Atkinson. So ethnography basically involves participating in people's daily life, other people's daily life, overtly or covertly, which basically means you reveal who are you or you don't reveal who are you for an extended period of time, watching what happens, listening to what is said and asking questions, and then find out your research answer to your research question. Okay. So this is what is ethnography. It is one of very interesting study designs. Ethnographic studies are very nice to read. You learn about different cultures and all that. And it's also one of the most difficult designs to execute, but very interesting. So let's see how to do an ethnography. So for this particular study design, I'm taking an example of a movie which most of you might have seen. Yes. Has anybody not seen this movie? Okay, you can put a yes in the chat box if you have seen it. You have seen Avatar. Because the next few minutes, you will be hearing a lot from the movie. Okay. Has anybody seen the movie? I'm not able to see any response.
Yes, we have seen the movie.
Okay, so you have answered for everyone. Thank you. For those of you who have not, this is your homework. It's a very interesting movie. It's from the director of the Titanic and Terminator, you know, James Cameron. One of the classic movies which you can watch. Okay, so let me ask a few questions. What is this movie about?
Invading a planet for rare minerals.
Okay, so invading somewhere to get something, right? So where is this particular, you know, just for those of you who don't know this regarding this movie is about a hypothetical space called Pandora, uh, which is a planet somewhere in the Milky Way. Okay, and humans are invading Pandora planet and taking some metal, which is called unobtainium, and using it for our purpose. Okay, and the people who live there are called as it's a tribal population which is called as Navis. And there is one human a team of humans actually who go there and studies about them. Okay, so I want you to remember this movie a little bit, and it has a lot of elements from ethnography and it's easy for you to connect. Okay. So this is how people from Pandora looks like. They are very tall, they are blue in color, and so many distinct characteristics they have. And this is somewhat the island, and you know, they have their own connection with nature. They have their own practices and stuff. And we'll see few things from this example and learn a little bit about ethnography. Okay. So one of the essence of ethnography is participant observation. Okay. So it's basically a branch of anthropology. And here you will observe the participants by being with them or as an outsider or become an insider and learn about them. So what is important here, which makes it different from all other types of qualitative study design, is the researcher is the primary research instrument. In all the other type of designs, you have a semi-structured interview guide, or you have a coding format or something like that, which is important. Here, you are important. The researcher is very important, and researcher is the primary research instrument. Okay, so what this particular ethnography means is it argues the facts of society and culture belongs to a different order from those of nature. Okay, so we have cultures which doesn't follow the rules of nature. So such things, such facts occur, and we have to acknowledge that. That is why we say that is the interesting thing about ethnography. It might study things which are not of, which might oppose to or a different order from those of nature. So for example, if we take Avatar, who is the primary research instrument? Whom do you feel is the primary research instrument? Any clue?
Hero?
Yeah, yes. Okay, so I think the primary research instrument is this guy. Who, do you remember this guy? Anyone?
Jack?
Close. It's Jake Sully. Okay. So he was basically, he turns into a avatar and he goes into their community and learns about them. So he is the primary research instrument. And the theoretical underpinning behind any ethnographic study is these two things. That is, there is cultural relativism and ethnocentrism. I think you can observe it in any culture. So what do you mean by cultural relativism? Okay. So what this means is values and institutions of any society were seen to have an internal logic of their own. If we see why our ancestors practiced certain traditions, which may oppose science, but they had logic of their own, right? So that is what is called as cultural relativism. What is practiced in my, culture might be different to yours, and we have different logics to make it work. Okay, so that is what is called as cultural relativism. And there is something else called as ethnocentrism. Okay. So I recently went to a Europe trip. Okay. And I was having the food from there and I was really missing Indian food. And I'm thinking, what are these people eating? Really? You should come taste our Indian food, right? That is the best in the world. I feel like that. And that is something called as ethnocentrism, which basically means any attempt to judge other societies as inferior or superior in this view. Okay. It's common among all of us. For us, our mother's food will be the best, or our country's food will be the best, and that applies for all the others also. Okay. So judging other societies as inferior or superior is something called as ethnocentrism. Okay. Now let's apply it to Avatar. If you remember the scene, I don't know how many of you have seen it. If not, I'm very sorry. This particular design, I've used this as an example. So there is this particular scene where the hero and the heroine, they meet and they walk on a bridge, and some sort of flying seeds comes and it engulfs this hero. Okay, and he don't know what is this, and he was just brushing it off. But this lady was just amazed at how this happens, and she tells him not to brush it off, and it will stick on to him, and then later it will spread. So this thing being stuck on a person's body has a meaning in her culture. Okay, while it doesn't have a meaning in his culture. Okay, so this is what is called as cultural relativism. And ethnocentrism, if you remember the villain, his name is, I think, Miles or something. Yeah. He is saying they are just tribal people, they don't know much, or he is saying their culture as primitive and judging them regarding that. This is something called as ethnocentrism. So any culture, you have to identify these kind of things and move ahead. Okay, that is what the theoretical underpinning of ethnography. So what makes ethnography different from other study designs is that you don't have a different stages of theorizing or hypothesis construction. You observe and your observation feeds into your research designs. And there are different techniques of inquiry. For example, you can use direct observation, informal and formal interviews. You can count things, you can do document analysis, and you are the most important thing. So observer is the primary research instrument. And here in ethnography, what you need to do is there is something called as ethnographic immersion. So you read any ethnographic paper, there will be a paragraph written on ethnographic immersion. That is how you interacted with this culture. How were you immersed in this culture? Okay, so society and culture could only be studied from the inside by the immersion of the researcher in the society, just like how you see, in the picture. And you can, if you remember, he was learning their ways and all that. That is basically called as ethnographic immersion. So you live with them, you be one of them, or, try to be one of them and then learn what happens. And that is called as ethnographic immersion. And you can do this in different types of observer position, okay? So there are 4 different types of observer position in ethnography. There is something called as complete participant, in which the researcher is completely immersed in the group. He becomes one of them, and he's usually concealed or covert. In participant as an observer, the researcher steps into and out of groups. That is, the research is known or open. And observer as participant, the researcher mainly observes, but occasionally enters the field. So here there is only a brief intervention. You are very briefly entering and going out. And complete observer means you're not participating in anything. You're just there observing them, either known to them or unknown to them. So there are different stances in which observer position. So if you're doing an ethnographic study, you have to say which is your position. Okay. Now tell me from Avatar, which position will be Jake Sully?
Complete participant.
Complete observer.
Participant.
No, okay. Anybody else? Okay.
Participant as observer.
Yes, I think this is more apt, because you can argue just saying like, he was stepping in and out of the groups, if you remember. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he goes back and reports to his boss. Okay, so it's something like a intervention is there, but not completely. Okay,
But the research is open, right?
research is open. Yeah.
But that.
Yeah, they know who he is. No problem. It's just for fun, I have put it. You can think and, debate on it later. Maybe you feel it's complete participant. Maybe somebody feels it's observer as participant. It's fine. But generally, what participant as observer seems more suited to the story. But the moral of the story is that you have to decide which one will you be when you're doing an ethnography. Okay, so when you're doing an ethnography, what are few things regarding sampling which you need to consider? Okay, now here there are some feasibility issues. How much time do you have? What are the type of people you're observing? And what are the context in which you need to observe them? Based on this, you will do the sampling. And here also you have purposive sampling and then theoretical sampling if you want to develop or test any ideas. So what is very important here is the data collection will depend on gaining access to population and establishing good working relations. So in majority of these cases, you need something called as gatekeepers, especially if you're working on a culture which is very, very isolated from mainstream. You need somebody from mainstream who has access to them. You cannot go directly to them. Okay, those people are called as gatekeepers and they are very important in ethnographic study. Okay. So I'll give you an example. We did one ethnographic studies around 6-7 years back on a tribal community in Wayanad. the Pania tribes. And we can't just directly go there and ask them. We need somebody who usually goes there to gain access to them. So we go with this gatekeeper. He was one of our participant. We have a peripheral center there. He was working there, so he'll take us and to the community. Then only they'll interact. So you need these gatekeepers who will help you in gaining access to your population. And there is also something like impression management. So you have to be respectful of that culture. Okay, and you have to create an impression that facilitates observation, avoids obstacles. For example, dressing that is familiar to people or interact with people whose views you disagree with. This might happen. There will be, you have to interact with people who may be violent or something like that. But you have to do it. So you have to be something like a marginal native. Okay, you have to be a little bit like them to understand this. If you remember, there is a conflict between Jake Sully and I forgot his name, somebody like this. So ideally, you should identify this and resolve conflicts. So these things can happen. So interviewing, these are few things which will help. You need to follow naturalism, gatekeepers and can help. You can use theoretical sampling to achieve your theory fast or your whatever you want to find. In-depth interviews is fine. And documents, official records, diaries, letters, all of these can be used as to document your findings. And here you have, most of the time there will be participant observations. So here you have something called as field notes, which basically is just what happens, what you're observing and how to write it down. So you need to plan for that. That is what to write down, how to write down, when to write down, etc. And if you're using audio recording or visual recording, you can use that also. There are so many ways in which you can collect an ethnography. So just like memos in grounded theory, you also have memos here. And here you can write in your analytical ideas in the process of data collection. This is called as reflexive monitoring and how ideas are generated. So if you remember from Avatar, Jake Sully goes back to his place and he does this memoing. So this is something you can do for your ethnographic study. Record what you are thinking or something like that. Maybe not record, maybe you can write it down. So this is called as analytical memos. And this is important, when to leave the field. So when the necessary data is obtained or data saturation is obtained, you leave the field, okay? And when there are no new ideas or something like that, you leave the field, close the relationship with participants, okay? Excuse me. And something that happens often in ethnography is that the researcher becomes so immersed in their culture that they become one of them. Okay, so you know what happened with Jake Sully. He became one of them, and this is something called as going native, which is a very common phenomenon in ethnography. People get fascinated by that culture that they marry somebody from there or settle down there. Okay, so this is what is ethnography. So it has, for example, data analysis and theoretizing, analysis of fieldwork data. You can use preliminary concepts that make analytical sense. You can relate data to social theory, organizational accounts, or common sense expectations. You can categorize data, do constant comparison analysis, or construct character. So what is ethnography in gist? It's basically focused on social and cultural research. It requires building up rapport or trust with people. And there are a lot of ethical issues when you do a ethnography. So you have to be very careful and make everything transparent, then go ahead with the study. So it's not easy to do, and there is some form of covert research also if you're doing it. But yet ethnography opens out the possibility of an understanding of reality that no other method can realize. So that's why ethnography is very unique and one of the most interesting forms of qualitative research. So these are few examples of ethnography in health. Mostly it is on migrants or tribals. You can see one of which is published by my team. And Atkinson's one of the pioneers in ethnography, so you can read few other articles as well. Okay, so I need some water and we can have another poll. So 2 more study designs to go. So Dr. Atra, can you post the, yes, third one? Okay, if it is more than 10, you can share it with us, the results.
We have only 5 responses so far.
Okay, I think people are getting a little tired, that's fine. Okay, so did you get any response which has highest number?
Okay, so we have a total of 7 responses, of which 4 are energizing and 3 are ritualistic.
Okay. Okay, fine. Thank you. So I think the question was regarding drinking tea, right? So what makes you drink tea and what is the experience of drinking tea? It's like, how you drink tea and what do you feel? For example, you feel energetic or, something like that. You're just exploring your lived experience, which is our next study design, which is phenomenology. Okay. So what is phenomenology? So phenomenology basically focuses on human experience about a phenomenon described by the participant. Okay. For example, drinking tea as described by you is my question. Okay. So any lived experience described by the participant, you are trying to make sense of that. That is what is phenomenology. So what it basically means is personality is not merely passively molded by internal motivation or external situational forces that shape what the person becomes. Rather, what it basically involves is people are active agents in the world and they have a measure of control over their environment and their own lives. So phenomenological assumption is that people are capable of knowing themselves, of being their own best experts. So you want to learn about something, you go to people who have experienced them and they are the best people to tell you that. Okay, that is the idea behind phenomenology. And there's an interesting story behind phenomenology. There are 2 different types of phenomenology, Husserlian phenomenology and the Heideggerian phenomenology, or otherwise called as transcendental or hermeneutic. Okay. So these are basically what they are. The interesting story is that this is a teacher and the second one is a student. And as usual, they fought for, and they had 2 different schools of thoughts. And the first person who was the founder, he advocated that transcendental phenomenology needs to be followed, which I'll tell you what is it. While the other person advocated different types of phenomenology, which is called hermeneutic phenomenology. Okay. So what this basically means is that the first one, he says that the description of the personal experience is the source of knowledge. That is, the researcher needs to suspend his own personal opinion and bias related to experience. For example, somebody is talking about an experience, you should only consider what he or she talks about. You should keep away your own personal opinions regarding that and then do the study. Okay. So that is the first one, that is a phenomenology, transcendental phenomenology. While the other person says that he rejects the idea of the researcher suspending personal opinion and bias. He says that why can't the researcher be opinionated about it? Okay, just like, there will be rebels. So this person is a rebel against his teacher. So he told that the interpretation of the description of the personal experience could be the source of knowledge. So there are two different ways in which you do phenomenology. You will do either transcendental phenomenology, where you keep away your your findings or opinions aside, and then only look into the personal experience of who you are interviewing. This is called as epoche, while the other one you will bring in your own subjective interpretation. Okay. So what is epoche, or how to actually put aside our thinking? So epoche is a Greek word used by Hustler, and he means to stay away or abstain from presupposition or judgments about the phenomena under the investigation. So you need to put aside your natural attitude towards the phenomena. Okay. So this requires a new point of view in order to avoid prejudgments when we face a familiar object. Now, how to actually do this process? How to actually practice epoche, that is non-judgment? It is by something called as bracketing. Okay. So bracketing is the process where preconceived beliefs and opinions concerning the phenomena of the research are identified and held in abeyance. So how to actually do it? For example, you're studying on a phenomena. You ask yourself, what do you know about this? For example, what do I think about this phenomena? What will this experience be like? And then you remove all the theoretical perspectives, constructs, preconceived ideas and experiences about the topic, because you've noted it down, you know what is your thinking. Okay. So this you leave it aside and it should not influence your analysis. So you only purely focus on what the participant has said and set aside your own reason. This process called as bracketing. So if you see somebody in a manuscript, it's a Husserlian phenomenology or a transcendental or a transcendental phenomenology, you will see that they have practiced this epoche and bracketing will be there. The other one, interpretive one, they will not have done. Okay, so this is one of the characteristics of Husserlian phenomenology. Now, when will you use phenomenological approach other than the others? Is when studying phenomena directly or indirectly experienced by a group of people, when potential participants have experienced or are currently undergoing a phenomena, and when you expect the participants to share their experience. For example, maybe it's a feedback on a course which you have done, which is basically a lived experience. In that cases, you can use the phenomenological approach. And here you have something called as a criterion sampling. Okay. Till now, we were mostly focused on purposive sampling. So here you know what experience you are looking into, right? So you need to make a criteria, just like how you make a inclusion-exclusion criteria. You have to make a criteria of this experience and then select the participants, which is called as the criterion sampling. So the researcher will look for participants who have shared an experience but vary in characteristics in their individual experience, and you follow the criterion sampling. Data collection, similar to all the other type of methods, in-depth interviews, focus group discussion, observation, or video recordings or audio recordings. Okay. Analysis, there are few existing models of phenomenological research and they all propose a different types of analysis, but however, the goal is the same. That is, in phenomenological analysis, you're just explaining what is the experience. Okay. So the essence is to describe the essence or core structures and textures of some conscious psychological experience. You may take a, theoretical coding also here. You see, it can all overlap. Whichever way in which you can nicely or in a good way explain the phenomenon, you can take up that way as the data analysis. This is one example of a study, which is a phenomenological study. That is the experience of healthcare providers during COVID-19 crisis in China. And they've interviewed the following participants like nurses and physicians. What was their experience in dealing with COVID? And they have found out, few themes and sub-themes. Okay, you can have a look here. And this is most of the time how a phenomenological results looks like. There will be some thematic analysis done. Okay, so there are a few medical and examples which I've listed down. I'm sure the slide will be shared with you, which you can have a look and see how it can be applied in your field. And you have two books from the teacher and the student, Hustler's Phenomenology and Heidegger's Phenomenology. Okay, so a couple more study designs to go. Can we have the next icebreaker? Question 4. You could conduct a case study on any famous incident in Indian history. Which would it be? Okay, Dr. Atra, has anybody responded?
And 7 people have responded.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy 7 are still awake. Okay. What are the results? You can read it out.
So now 8 people have responded, of which 2 people opted for the launch of Mars orbiter mission Mangalyaan.
Mhm.
5 out of 8 opted for the Nirbhaya case and its impact on women's safety.
Mhm.
And 1 person has opted for the birth of iconic Indian reality show Big Boss.
Okay, interesting. So what these these options give you is basically case studies. Okay, so there is an incident that has happened and there is a context around it. That is something called as case study. So we'll see what is case study, which is our next study design. So what is case study? It is the exploration of a phenomena within some context. Okay, and it will be done through various data sources with variety of lenses in order to reveal multiple facets of the phenomenon. So this is something called as case study. And this is one example which we give is something like the heart of the study and the edge of the case. Okay, so in case study, a real-time phenomenon is explored within its naturally occurring context with the consideration that context will create a difference. For example, an IPL happening, a Premier League in India and a Premier League in Australia will be very different, you can imagine, if the context changes, right? In India, it's crazy. People are crazy regarding IPL and it's running successfully till now. Maybe it will not be the case if a Premier League starts in Australia. Maybe people may love it, maybe not. But if context changes, maybe things will change. Or for example, a Big Boss happening in Malayalam or a Big Boss happening in Hindi and other languages will be very different, right? So when context changes, something happens to the case, which is what is called as case study. So you are explaining the case with respect to the context. So the case selected for the study has boundaries and often bounded by time and place. It also has interrelated parts that form the whole. So a proper case study is both bounded and it has a system. We explore that in the coming slides. So the pioneers of case studies are basically Stake and Ian. So they have a lot of, worked out examples of how to do a case study research. But there is actually a controversy happening. You can see a case study in quantitative research also. So there is a question whether is it inquiry or is it a study design or what is it actually? Okay, and this is open to delay. It's open to debate. Okay, so Stake is somebody who states that case study research is not a methodology but a choice of what is to be studied. That is a case within a bounded system. Others present it as a strategy of inquiry, a methodology, or a comprehensive research strategy. So there is a debate going on really what is a case study. And if you're following Stakes, you will say it is it's just a form of inquiry, while others may state it's a methodology. Okay. So what case study basically means is regarding these two theoretical underpinning, which is the relativist ontology and the subjectivist epistemology. So don't worry, these heavy terms. It's very simple. So relative ontology basically means there is no reality that actually is there. It's all socially constructed. It's like it's in our mind kind of thing. while subjectivist epistemology suggests it interprets the reality subjectively. So what you feel will be mostly the reason than what actually the truth is. So I'll give you an example so you can understand. So a social construction refined through the interaction between researcher and respondent is what is the basis of case study. So you are seeing it, you're observing it, and it's your findings, and it's a lot of subjectivity coming in. Okay, so case study is different from other methods. For example, if it is inductive, which is basically from narrow to general, while deductive is from general to narrow. You can see here it's general to narrow. While abductive is basically, it's a combo approach. Okay, I'll give you an example here. Okay, so abduction basically means inference to the best explanation. Okay, so given an observation B and a background knowledge, you find an explanation. For example, the experience of walking in a damp grass or a wet grass. Okay, so you're walking in a grass, and what will be your reasoning? Okay, so you say, oh, the grass is wet. And then you know in your background knowledge that a rain makes a ground wet. Okay, so you combine it together and say that it may have rained recently. So this is what is abduction. Okay, that is inference from the best explanation based on your background knowledge. So this is what is used to understand social phenomena in terms of social actors, motives, and understanding. And the end product is a tentative theory or framework, and we use this in a case study. So why case study is appropriate? The nature of the when the nature of the problem requires an in-depth exploration of the phenomena, and the contextual factors determined by actors involved in the phenomena is very important. Process involved in phenomena, that is theory generation, is needed. Abductive logic of inquiry, that is you need an interpretation to solve the puzzle. So interpretivism and elaborate the process empirically, hypothetical framework. Then if you have an abductive logic of inquiry, you can use a case study. And then finally, you have an outcome. That is a starting point of a deductive research. Okay. So this outcome you will follow up with a deductive research. This is just an example of how when you can use a case study. And the sampling, most of the time, we'll use purposive sampling based on what will yield us more results. And there is also something called as maximum variation sampling. So if a case study is there, you take up different types of cases which very differ. Maybe they differ in age or gender, whatever. So you take whatever maximum variation you can get and then do the case study, which is called as maximum variation sampling. This is just to show different perspectives. And if you see, you may have a doubt, is case study based on a single person or it's just a single case or a multiple case? So it can be both. A single case study is there where the researcher focus only on a single issue and select a single case to illustrate the issue. Or you can have collective or multiple case study where you can focus on one issue, but select multiple issues to illustrate the issue. Okay, so these are a few things which you can do. And these are the usual data collection techniques: interviews, discussion, observation, all of these, and field notes if you want. You can mostly do a thematic analysis, that is develop a detailed description of the cases and common themes in the cases. And if you're using multiple cases, describe each case and themes first, that is within case analysis. And if you're comparing cases for common themes, it is called as cross-case analysis. Okay, so this you can do if you have multiple cases and a single case, within case and cross-case analysis. Report the lessons learned from the case regarding the issue of the case, or learn about an unusual situation. So this is something we use in case studies. So you can see a look into different types of case studies. I've given an example. And you can see the type of questions. For example, what does the development of medical tourism in Barbados hold for health equity? An exploratory qualitative case study. Okay. Another one in dental is a qualitative case study of the legislative process of the hygienist therapist bill in a large Midwestern state. So imagine these type of topics, can be done with a case study. Okay. You can Yin and Hancock, these are few pioneers. You can check out their methods if you use a case study, and don't get confused when you see case study for a quantitative. It is basically used in different forms. In qualitative case study, you will have a case and a context well defined and different methods in which you can collect data. Okay. So I hope you're with me. I know it might go a little over the top, but I just need you to understand these things are there and some basic idea regarding these types of designs are available and few characteristics of the design. That is more than enough at your, as a beginner stage. Shall we proceed with the next one, which is the final? Okay. The last question. What do you think is the best part of a good story? Okay. Adra, any response?
Ma'am, we have 10 responses so far.
Great. Okay. So any high responses?
The highest response is for the last option, that is the way it is told. We've got
Wonderful.
5 people out of 10 who have answered it.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. So our last study design. Thank you. So our last study design is narrative research, okay? Which is basically a story. Yeah. So what you're thinking is same. It's just like, you know, how a story needs to be told, and it's the form of qualitative research. So what is narrative? So narrative is understood as a spoken or written text giving an account of an event, action, or series or events or actions chronologically connected. So what is important here is basically the timeline. Okay, so an event happening and the way you are narrating it. So a theoretical underpinning for something like narrative research is that this focuses on stories told by individuals. It explores what the stories means and the lessons to be learned. Okay, a good narrative report should have characters, setting, sequence of events, crisis or problem, and a solution. So here you have to bring in, it's like writing a movie script or something like that. You have to bring in all the information here. What are the characters? What is the setting? What time sequence does it occur? What is the issue? How is it studied? Okay, so that's what makes it different from phenomenology where you just mention the experience. Here, so many things are taken into consideration. You're building up a narrative or a story. So this was first developed by Connolly and Clarendon. They use it a lot for education, that is for teachers. Okay, storytelling and all is very important for teachers. So this form of qualitative inquiry is used most of the time in education. But if you have an interesting story in your field about something, you can use this type of research. So here the focus is on, basically will be on a single person, getting the data through collection of stories, reporting individual experiences, discussing the meaning of these experiences for the individual. Okay. So when should you actually use a narrative research? So when you are telling a story based on the participant's narration, you can use a narrative research. When you are describing an event or experience of a person or a group of people, you can use this. When bringing to light a unique experience of a person, you can use this. Or you can do it in a self way. That is, when describing your own experience in a narrative form, you can use a narrative research. So there are few interesting things of or key characteristics. It's individual experiences. There will be a timeline or chronology. You will be collecting the stories. Sometimes if it's somebody else's story, you have to restore it. That is, rebuild the story. You can do coding for themes. Coding you can do and do a thematic analysis. You can mention the context or setting, and then you need to collaborate with the participants. So these are few characteristics of narrative design. And there are different ways to collect stories. You can interview people, You can ask them to write their feelings or something like that in a journal or a diary. You can observe them. You can correspond through letters. You can, understand about somebody from their family members or friends. You can obtain photos or something like that or artifacts and then understand regarding that. So these are a few examples or interesting ways in which you can build a narrative or a story. Okay, so most of the time it will be the story can be put into themes or categories, and I'll talk about this thematic analysis categories and all that in the last session. So you'll have some idea, but just understand that theme or thematic analysis done in narrative research. So this is an example of somebody. It's called On the Bus with Bonnie Lee. It's one article which I've read, which is a narrative research. So here, what the author is doing is something like this. So this is the story regarding Bonnie Lee. He's a 29-year-old mentally ill man whom the author met at the Opportunity House. So this is a mentally ill man. He talks about his life and his descriptions of life as the author interacted with him. His descriptions are basically based on a bus route. Okay. And his life is centered regarding bus route. He's very excited to talk regarding a travel which he does every day. Okay. So to understand this better, the author took a bus trip with Bonnie Lee to his workplace. Okay. And this is narrated how he goes into the bus and what are his feelings during the bus travel is narrated by the author. That is the gist of the study. And the bus held special meaning for Lee. And on the bus, he supplied the researcher with details about the people, places, and events of the journey. So there is a timeline and narration going on. So these are like, this is how you arrive at the conclusions from somebody who's mentally ill. What a common thing like a commute to work means to them. Okay. So here he states that the bus gave meaning to Bonnie Lee's life through escape and empowerment. This meaning is explained why he told his life stories in the form of a bus route. And he's few examples. So the researcher reflected on the use of metaphor as a framework for analyzing stories of participants in life history projects at the end of the study. Okay, he was using bus route as a metaphor for life. Okay, so just an example on how a narrative can be, beautifully explained and findings can be found from some studies. Okay, so you can see from here a few examples. What is a good death? There are stories from palliative care. So they'll be describing regarding death, the timeline and all that. Selecting a Bachelor of Dental Science degree in dental hygiene, stories shared from a narrative inquiry. So this is interesting. So if you have something in your field where you want to share a story, you can take up narrative research. Okay, so we are concluding. I think we are way ahead, 3:30. Okay. So what is basically from all this, what do you usually get is if you want to understand regarding a portrait of an individual or a group. So if it is at the individual level, to describe somebody, a narrative study is used. If you want to describe a group, that is a culture sharing group or understand regarding them, you can use an ethnography. If you have a case which is bounded by context and understand what is happening with the context, a case study. If you want to explain something and theorize it, you can use a grounded theory. If you want to know a person, how he or she has lived through an experience, you can use a phenomenology. Okay. Now, I know you're all confused and you may feel, aren't all of these overlapping, right? So I'll tell you with this interesting thing. So if you remember, Creswell is actually the pioneer in qualitative research, and he was presenting a seminar in Colorado, and this happened to him. Okay, so he was talking about qualitative data analysis, and he was introducing a case study of a gun incident in his campus. Okay, he was doing a case study of a gun incident, student gun incident. There's somebody who's shooting someone in his campus. He has done a case study on that, and he is presenting it. So what he says is that standing before the group, he told the events of the case, the themes, the lessons, all that of a near tragic event. And he could see some different responses from the crowd. Okay. And one of the person from, for example, Harry Walcott from Oregon, University of Oregon, he told that he would approach this study as a cultural anthropologist. Okay, he's a cultural anthropologist. So he told he'll bring a different perspectives to the study. And he turned the case study into an ethnography, framing the study in an entire new way. While another person called Les Goodchild, he turned the gunman case into a historical study. So this made Creswell think that one designed the study differently depending on the method of qualitative research. Okay, so what are the takeaway messages that you can get from this particular webinar is that there is no wrong or right study design when it comes to qualitative. For example, in qualitative, it's either observation study, analytical study, or experimental study. You can't do an experimental study and observe people. You have to do an intervention, right? So there is a right and wrong study design there, but that's not the case of a qualitative study. There is no right or wrong study design. Whatever choice you're making, you have to justify it. For example, I am doing a case study because this is my case and this is the context. So I'm explaining that the reasoning why I'm doing a case study. Or ethnography. I'm choosing ethnography because I believe there is a cultural significance and it requires ethnographic immersion. That's why I'm doing a ethnographic study. You're doing a phenomenological study in which you're choosing maybe interpretive phenomenology because you feel you can give good inputs and you can make sense of this lived person's experience better. So whatever methodology you choose, you just need to justify your choice, okay? And each approach to qualitative research is not mutually exclusive. It's not like you can only use phenomenology or something like that. You can use phenomenology, ethnography combined. So this combination is also possible. For example, a case study can also incorporate grounded theory. Okay. So these are few study designs which are important, and this will be the most which you will come across when you read qualitative study designs. Now, if you want to get more training into qualitative research, there are few online courses from NPTEL, that is the Swayam portal, and Coursera, which can give you a good outline of what is qualitative research. If you want to attend an offline course, if you're very serious and you want to learn from the best in India, there are two different centers. Samarth Chennai, I've gone to these. So Samarth Chennai is actually an NGO, and it comes under Schizophrenia Research Foundation. You can go there. They do a 3-day workshop on qualitative research. Very nice people, very experienced, and they can teach you regarding qualitative research. Or if you prefer, if you're in Bangalore, you can go to NIMHANS. They also conduct a lot of qualitative research and workshops. If you want to learn or read a book, you can choose Creswell. So Creswell is the pioneer and his books are there. If you want to get an idea, you can go with it. Okay, now if you want to connect with me, I know these are just a brief outline. If you want to know, if you have a doubt, I have a topic like this, I don't know which methodology to choose or some issues, you can connect with me. These are my details and you can mail me whenever you want. If possible, if I'm available, I'll be very happy to help you because I really want this particular interesting field to come up, and it's very nice that specialty like transfusion medicine is giving importance to this. So kudos to the team. I'm open to questions. If you want to ask or clarify anything, please go ahead. Any questions?
If anyone has any questions, please unmute yourself and ask.
You can post in the chat box too. Yeah, I think everybody's saturated. We have reached theoretical saturation. Thank you, everyone. I hope it has been useful to you. And I will wait for the feedback. Please do give feedback. We can all improve by hearing from you.
So thank you so much, ma'am. That was a very insightful session, especially
Thank
with
you.
the interesting interactive polls and the parallels you drew from the pop culture. So thank you again, ma'am, from team
Thank you.
us. For everyone, we've put in a link in the chat box. Please submit it so that we can send you your participation certificates. So that's it for today's session. Our next session, that is the third part of the series, is planned for October 19th on qualitative data collection techniques. And it will be presented by Dr. Bindu V. Bhaskar. So until we meet again, goodbye from Teamers.
Thank you. Goodbye, everyone.